Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lucha Underground, a Luchador Spotlight. On our last episode, we talked about Superfly and his season one and his confrontations with Pentagon and then eventually Sexy Star. But one thing that we kind of noticed when we were talking about Superfly was that there were an awful lot of L's on his win-loss record, and we kind of wanted to stick to that theme today. So rather than trying to kind of find some kind of a direct connection between Superfly and another luchador, we just kind of stuck with the theme. And today we're going to be talking about the undercard of Lucha Underground. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Vinny Massaro, Famous B, Argenis, El Mariachi Loco, and Ricky Mandel.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those more intriguing installments of Luchador Spotlight. A, because we're covering multiple people, all because they fit under this banner of jobbers or just, really undercard. And two, at least for me in the case of Famous B and Argenis, I do see a lot of possibility there. But hey, the great thing about Lucha Underground is I think they'd look at all of these guys and see possibility in one vein or another because they just have that kind of creative ingenuity. So I'll be very intrigued, Ashton, you and I having a discussion about the prospective season 2 for all of these guys. And it should be an interesting episode today.
Right, and I really, that's why I wanted us to cover these guys, because even though we're covering 5 in one video, I think that even though a lot of people would just kind of look at them and say, oh, well, yeah, they're jobbers. They're going to be jobbers in season 2, too. I think that you see at least one or two guys in this group, and I know I see at least one or two guys in this group that we can elevate past that jobber status. So before we even talk about what we want to do with them in the future, let's just kind of talk about anything interesting that happened with them in season 1, because really the most interesting thing that happened with any of these guys was getting their arm broken by Pentagon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're not even going to bother with an episode by episode breakdown because, the episodes are kind of scattered around. There were no really linear storylines with any of these guys, but noteworthy events that happened with them, obviously, I'm pretty sure all 5 of them, if not at least 3 of the 5, got their arm broken by Pentagon. I know for a fact that Vinny, Famous B, and Ricky Mandel all got their arms broken. Not sure about Argenis and Mariachi Loco, though.
I think, didn't Argenis get his arm broken? Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Argenis
he did
did get his arm
too.
broken.
Yep,
Mariachi
right.
Loco
So we're up
did
to
not,
4.
though.
4 out of 5 got their arms broken by Pentagon.
Yeah. So
That's kind of the biggest thing for most of them. But Argenis, El Mariachi Loco, and Ricky Mandel are the Disciples of Death. So even though they have 2 different characters that they portray, that's kind of how we see it. We don't necessarily see it as Argenis, El Mariachi Loco, and Ricky Mandel became the Disciples of Death. To us, those are just 2 different characters played by 3 individuals that are being paid by Lucha Underground.
yes. And we're going to treat them as such in this video.
Exactly.
So what's funny, Ashton? Because I guess that's pretty much it, right, for season 1. All the musings that you want to have on that.
The only other thing that I will point out is that Famous B had a really kind of eye-opening showing in the final battle for the final medallion to put into the Gift of the Gods belt, where obviously Phoenix ended up winning, but still, you even remarked about how good Famous B looked in that battle royal.
Yeah, it definitely raised his stock for me. I mean, so much so, his name is the one that's kept leaving my lips when we talk about, that jobber cluster of guys that could do more than that. What's funny, I mean, just to really get into the conversation of what could be done with these guys, because that's pretty much it for their season 1. For 3 of these guys, even, because I even have a little idea for El Mariachi Loco. I'll be honest, even I'm not 100% in love with it, even though I thought of it, because it is kind of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit WWE-esque, which always makes me kind of wary, when you're putting in Lucha Underground territory. But I'm thinking, wouldn't it be interesting, because this guy is El Mariachi Loco, the whole music-based thing. He gets 2 other guys to run with him, and they wouldn't even start out in the trios division. I would have them kind of, picking fights with whoever the musical act was on that particular episode of Lucha Underground until they become the musical act for a little bit. Then I would have a team come forward and tell them how much they suck, because they're still like this Rudo team, and then you just make them an active part of the trios division. So I think you get El Mariachi Loco 2 running mates. He'd be a good hand in the trios, which is funny because he's already one of the Disciples of Death. But as the El Mariachi Loco character, that could also be interesting. That was the only idea I had for him. As far as Argenis goes, It's funny because I could see him as a strong like mid card babyface technical. Think like Aerostar. I could see Arhennis kind of fit in that same role.
Yeah, that's kind of sort of what I had planned for him too. I think Arhennis is underrated because to me, a lot of the stuff that he does in the ring, it kind of reminds me of almost like a Hunico, what Hunico used to do when he was in WWE. And I always remember the one match that you and I were freaking out about. It was Hunico versus Ted DiBiase Jr. And I would implore anyone to go check that match out. I think it was on an episode of SmackDown. It was either SmackDown or Main Event, but yeah, John. You and I have always been way bigger fans of Hunico than pretty much anyone else that we've known in our time on YouTube. But
Yeah.
that a lot of what Arhennis does reminds me of what Hunico does, and to me, the way I define it is it's kind of like an off branch of Lucha Libre, because Lucha Libre is kind of that pure high flying flipping, like all the head scissors takedowns and Hurricane Ranas and arm drags and stuff. And Hunico and Arhennis both kind of use that kind of stuff, but they also add a really good power game that's a great counter to other people that use the Lucha Libre style that most luchadors don't necessarily have.
Yeah, it's a great blend. I think you're absolutely right, and I would agree with your assessment that Arhennis is definitely underrated. Vinny Massaro, I'll be honest, Ashton, he's the one I've really struggled with the most to see, like, well, what could we kind of squeeze out of him to kind of elevate him? I really don't know. I mean, did you have any ideas for Vinny Massaro? Because that was the one I struggled with the most, honestly.
I think Vinny Massaro is the perfect guy to kind of have that almost like that Mikey Whipwreck character where he shows up a lot, but no matter what, he never really gets the leg up. He always loses, and maybe we get to add a little bit of personality to that where he'll lose, and then like after the match, whoever beat him just kind of leaves like, yeah, another day at the office, just beat Vinny Massaro again, no big deal. And over time, he starts to kind of be more and more expressive after losses where he, maybe one time you just kind of see him do like the finger snap, like, dang, could have had that one, or maybe maybe like he kind of sulks in the corner after a loss, or just kind of adding little things, and then eventually he kind of gets closer and closer, and you could just build up the entire season to him beating somebody. Even if he beats somebody else in this little tier, maybe he gets a win over Famous B, or hell, maybe even take a step up. Maybe he gets a clean win over Superfly, and maybe it's even like a hiccup win, but he gets that one win and the crowd can go crazy for, like, almost like a Hanma, like a Tomoaki Hanma, except, I mean, very different kind of situations, but that's kind of how I would want to build someone like Vinny Massaro.
And if you guys notice, I've been holding off on talking about Famous B. For me, I would have him, like, because they're obviously going to have to account for all these months being off TV, right? Because, they do the format differently.
Right.
I would have Famous B pretty much be like, well, after doing so well in the Battle Royal and coming so close to getting to, the very first Ultima Lucha, I did some reflection. I frequented Boyle Heights a lot more. I got in a lot more fights in the barrio, and I got better. So I would have him do a lot of fighting in his off time. And, because of that, I would have him more of a legit record. Obviously,
sounds like you would give him at least one or two vignettes to kind of show his time in the off season fighting people.
Definitely. Use that production value. Use that aesthetic to your advantage. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd have him come in, get the slow burn, start beating guys, like Superfly, this and that and the other. Ultimately, though, what I'm getting at is I would have him be that shock participant in Gift of the Gods. Obviously, he wouldn't win it, but I think him getting in it would be like, oh my God, if you remember Famous B last year, couldn't win worth a lick. Now this year he's in Give It to the Gods. This shows that anybody can make it in Lucha Underground. Anybody can be dominant in this temple. Yeah, I would put Famous B in Give It to the Gods because after his performance in the Battle Royal last season, he could just be like, man, just if they didn't gang up on me, if I was just, it could have just been if. And then he decides to do something about it. And I would chronicle that story. And then it ultimately does pay off to get in the match that he couldn't get in last season. Still a losing effort ultimately because I still have Son of Havoc pegged to win it. But I think it would be great if we could tell that kind of story with Famous B, both for himself and just the image as a promotion. Be like, see, don't take out stock too soon on a guy that you may like, because all it takes is one season for us to turn it around with them. So those are my musings on Famous B.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I actually had the same plan, but for Arhennis. I have Arhennis. And I think the big difference between you and me as far as what our plan for season 2 is the kind of the glaring difference is that I've got two different Gift of the Gods unification matches happening.
Yes.
And that kind of opens things up a little bit where if I want to put like an Arhenis in one of them, it'll be a nice little change of pace, but it won't really take any credibility away from anyone because,
Right.
like, you think about it, there are going to be 14 people involved in those two matches, and even if you want to repeat 3 or 4 of them, you're still talking 10 plus people.
Right. Right.
So I think getting Arhenis into one of the two Gift of the Gods unification matches wouldn't be too much of a stretch, honestly.
No, certainly not. No, it's not a leap at all. Hell, Arhenis, I feel like already kind of has the credibility coming in and everything. If they would put the time into him, that even him just getting, if I'm right, and there's only one, he's just got that kind of stock to me that it's believable. Famous B, it would take quite a bit of work. I'm not denying that, but I think Lucha Underground, they are just so capable. I have no doubt that they could, really bring out the potential in Famous B and make
Yeah.
a great character. That's why I'm making that. Like, I wouldn't be saying these things if I didn't believe in Lucha Underground's ability to will them to happen, to will them
Right.
into existence.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, do we have anything for Ricky Mandel? Because to me, I think that what really sets him apart from most of the rest of the temple is, and just to be blunt here, he's a white guy.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
it's
he
fun.
could totally, and that's the thing too, is like they are in California, but they're in a very heavily Hispanic neighborhood in California. They could use Ricky Mandel to channel his inner Los Angeles and be a total like surfer guy, California douchebag, and get tons of heat in that temple.
It's funny because I like Ricky Mandel's look, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's
he's
why
got that
I'm
great
bringing
look.
that up because he's got the
Yeah.
look like what you would expect, like a surfer or like a skateboarder, like like the extreme sports kind of guys to look like.
I think you bring a female with him to like valet. I could see that,
Oh my God,
going very well.
yes.
Yeah, I think you get like you talked about a surfer. If he has like a surfer chick or just somebody that like I don't want to say like a groupie, I don't want to use that term, but like just somebody that's really enamored with him,
Bring
that
in
could
bring in
work.
Scarlett Bordeaux.
Oh my God, she'd be perfect for that.
Yep.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah. Yeah, Ricky Mandel's another one where, like, hell, if I could say Famous B could, get in a match like that, Ricky Mandel's already got such a great look. If they'd feature him enough in the second season, maybe he could even get in Gift of the Gods or at least be in a prominent qualifying match. Maybe his
Yeah.
opposition would be like, Puma or something, and or something
And
like that. I don't know.
and I love this too because that's kind of what I wanted to bring up at the beginning of this was we have these 5 guys who did pretty much nothing in season 1. You see something in Arhenis and Famous B. I see something in Ricky Mandel and Arhenis, and I think we both had a little something too for El Mariachi Loco. And I even came up with a cool way to get Vinny Massaro over. Who's left?
Wait, Vinny Massaro, Ricky Mandel, Arhenis, Famous B. Is there anybody left?
No, that's it. So we covered everyone. So yeah, like I think that there's a lot that can still be done with these guys. It's not like just because and that's the thing too. A lot of the time, the job guys have some of the most interesting characters because it's just kind of the natural way that it works. Where if you lose a lot, you've got a story to tell. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to me, like yeah, I think we could definitely get a fresh better fighting version of Famous B, like you said. We could kind of increase Arhenis's win count because really, to me, he doesn't have anything that he really needs to change character wise. He's just a
Right.
really good wrestler and just have him start winning instead of losing. And then Ricky Mandel, we can do that California surfer douchebag gimmick where he gets just tons of heat. And plus, if you want to bring in someone like I said, a Scarlett Bordeaux, as just kind of like his side piece, you could do that. And then El Mariachi Loco feuds with the band that they bring in to play every week. And we get Vinny Massaro, that underdog story. So really, all 5 of these guys, we're not giving that kind of week by week, play by play kind of booking like we like to do with most other people. But we still have these different ideas that these guys aren't just bottom of the barrel, useless, worthless, or anything like that. They're still good talents. They're still interesting characters, and there's still something you can do with them. And I think that that's kind of the moral of today's episode, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad we did this.
All right. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to close this out here. Next time, though, and next time specifically will be on Saturday. We will be covering Mascarita Sagrada, who may be short in stature, but he is not short in fighting ability.
Certainly. That's going to be an interesting episode to cover. We'll be interested to talk about that with you.
Absolutely.